Hi, my name is Christine Gustafson. I am the CEO, Executive Director of the TED Community Organization. It is a nonprofit exclusive to thyroid eye disease. Today, for our personal stories, we are talking to Jessie, and Jessie is going to help us understand her TED journey, which has not been easy. She's very gracious to be here, and so Jessie, welcome. Thanks for being here. And I would like to ask you just to start. So, what was your life like before your diagnosis with thyroid eye disease, Ted?
Thank you for having me, Christine.
Welcome.
So before my diagnosis, I feel like I was at a point in my life where I was kind of thriving. My career was taking off. I had a lot of friends around me. I kind of like found myself a bit more. I was feeling very confident in who I was, and just very like hopeful about the future.
And then what happened? How did it come about, like your first symptoms of thyroid eye disease?
So I woke up one morning and I kind of had what looked like an allergic reaction around my eyes, and I didn't know what it was. So that went on for about 2 weeks, and the whole time I'm just thinking, is there something new that I'm doing? Is there some kind of different product that I'm using that could be causing an allergic reaction? And there wasn't. So eventually I found my way to an eye doctor. Um, and the eye doctors that I went to were optometrists who had never heard of thyroid eye disease. So they didn't really know what was going on with me. So they did a bunch of different tests, but those tests ultimately came back negative. Um, so then my eyes during that time period had also progressed a bit. So my eyelids began retracting a little bit, and my eyes had become more swollen and painful um, every day that went on. And I had a lot of light sensitivity that came about during that time period too.
Did you find yourself doing some research, like going on to Google or anywhere looking for answers? It sounds like you weren't getting answers from the doctors.
I did. I spent a lot of time. It was almost like a second full-time job researching all of my symptoms and just trying to figure out what was going on with me. Um, and Nothing really came up too much. Yeah, I couldn't really find anything about it online.
So how ultimately did you come to a TED diagnosis?
So I went to my OBGYN and she actually did like an exam on me and noticed that my thyroid was enlarged. And I had also started experiencing symptoms of having Graves' disease during that time period too, having like an overactive thyroid. So she recommended that I go see an endocrinologist and get blood work done. And then when that happened, I started to see the terms, thyroid eye disease pop up more online. Now that I knew that I was having like other physical symptoms of something being wrong too, that's when I kind of self-diagnosed before seeing an
Mm-hmm.
ophthalmologist.
Mm-hmm. So the endocrinologist, so she eventually said, okay, you have Graves' disease, right? That's what happened? So then what about now? Did she prescribe for you to treat the Graves? Did she explain that thyroid eye disease is a separate autoimmune, or what was your understanding in the beginning?
I really didn't have much understanding of it at all in the beginning, and um, a lot of the doctors that I worked with didn't really have much of an understanding of thyroid eye disease, at least not my endocrinologists. I had to see an ocular surgeon to um, like fully understand what was going on with my eyes. Um, what was the question again? I'm sorry.
So no, that's okay. So with the endocrinologist, So it sounds like she didn't really know a lot about thyroid eye disease. What did she do to help you with the Graves' disease?
So she treated me with methimazole. I don't know how to pronounce
With
it.
Thimerosal?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you're there.
So she treated me with that, and then I actually became very like hypothyroid. So my levels were very low. So I was kind of like up and down on this medication for a while. I was taking propranolol too for my heart rate, because my heart rate kind of skyrocketed whenever I was overactive. So that went on for a while. That went on for about like a year and a half before she had recommended treatment options for my thyroid symptoms.
Mhm. And then how did you eventually get that under control with the Graves' disease? Because I mean, that's a piece of the thyroid eye disease. Generally, it's recommended to get your thyroid numbers under control, like to get the Graves' disease under control prior to um, being able to fully treat the thyroid eye disease. So how does she help you get kind of normalized with your thyroid numbers?
Yeah, things were very up and down. I actually went through a bit of a thyroid storm too, in the very beginning of it all. So it was kind of a chaotic year and a half for me. So after we couldn't get the levels right, and I had started to experience more grave symptoms like edema in my legs and stuff like that, she had recommended doing um, the radioactive iodine and or a total thyroidectomy. So I had researched both, and I kind of decided with my doctor that a thyroidectomy would be the best route for me to go on.
Mhm,
But at that point, those were really the only two options that were given to me.
mhm. Yeah. So did that help? So you had the surgery and then that helped your thyroid levels um, go back to normal a little bit.
Yeah, it took some time, but my thyroid levels became more normal after that. My a lot of my grave symptoms kind of went away.
Hmm.
Um, I also changed my diet a lot, and I just focused on like de-stressing a lot too, which I think helped.
Hmm. Yeah, this is great. So, I mean, but a long journey to, like so many different steps. So when you got to is it ocular plastic surgeon that you saw? Uh,
Yeah, it is.
yeah. So what? Now you're addressing the thyroid eye disease. So what kind of recommendations were you given there?
So this is all going on at once. So when I saw the ocular surgeon, he diagnosed me with a moderate case of thyroid eye disease. And he thought that I would be a really good candidate for Tepezza, given my symptoms and the fact that I was kind of like in the early stages of thyroid eye disease. I was only about maybe 3 months in when I saw him,
Mhm,
and my eyes had began bulging. So he recommended Tepezza to help um, like alleviate the symptoms, like the swelling and the bulging and the light sensitivity that I was experiencing.
mhm. So then tell me about that. Was that like an immediate yes, or did you do some research, or so then, what's your next treatment step?
So I did a little bit of research before seeing him, and I was actually like very against going on Tepezza at first. Prior to all of this, I was healthy. I didn't take any medication. I had never gotten like an IV fluid or anything before. So I was just very apprehensive about all of it, and I didn't want to do it. But then when he sat me down and he told me that I would be a good candidate, and he discussed what the side effects were and how it could like really benefit me and like help kind of stop the progression of thyroid eye disease, I was like, okay, that's something worth exploring. So I ultimately, he made me feel comfortable enough that ultimately I was like, all right, this is a good option for me.
Mhm,
So within a month, he was able to get me approved for it, and I was on Tepezza. So within like 4 to 5 months of me being like of seeing symptoms start, I was able to go on Tepezza.
Mhm. Hmm. And then did you notice, like, as you were going through the treatments, were the symptoms reducing? Were you seeing good results?
I was almost right away, the swelling around my eyes started to go down and the light sensitivity started to get better
Mhm.
because I couldn't even go outside. Before that, whenever I go outside, it was like a pain. Like I
Mhm.
couldn't open my eyes because it was so painful.
Mhm.
So, Tepezza really helped the light sensitivity as well. Uh,
Mhm.
it wasn't until around like maybe 3 or 4 infusions that I started to really see drastic results, but those were
Mhm.
some of the first symptoms that Tepezza helped.
Mhm. So, like, in the end, you're glad that you took that path and took it early on, it sounds like.
I
Um,
am,
mhm.
I looked at all the risks and I just thought that it was the right move for me. So
Mhm.
I'm really glad that I did it because I saw really good results from it.
Mhm. Hmm. And so when you talk to other TED patients, I mean, you're in a particular situation, like you can say, here's my experience that it might help somebody else. Especially like we have with Tepezza, and then we have many more clinical trials happening right now for thyroid eye disease with other biologics. All of them have their unique kind of properties. But do you feel that, uh, I mean, that's a really good solution that, the biologics, as opposed to what else was available to you? Like the ocular plastic surgeon, did he tell you, like, okay, you can take Tepezza or here's another option? Did he have that type of a conversation with you?
He didn't really have that kind of conversation with me. It was pretty much, you have Tepezza as the medicine option or you have the surgical option for it. And
Hmm.
because of all the swelling that was around my eyes, he really didn't recommend doing the surgical route.
Hmm.
Um, and he didn't recommend doing it at all until my levels were looking better with my thyroid and
Hmm.
until my eyes had stopped changing
Hmm.
because they were still like in the active phase at that point, changing a lot.
Hmm. Yeah, it's super interesting because, like, for myself, I have thyroid eye disease, and at that time, there were no biologics. And so you couldn't, they had to wait to do any kind of surgery. And for me, it was almost 4 years before all that swelling went down. So that was 4 years of like really intense symptoms. And then the surgeries, it took actually 7 surgeries to do what, you were able to accomplish very early on in your journey with the biologics. So that's a difference. It's not to say that surgery is not a good idea. It can be a good idea in some cases, but that is just kind of a dividing line that you can see pre-biologics like Tepezza and post, because prior there was not anything. You could only have that one advice from your surgeon, ocular plastic surgeon. And I mean, he's a surgeon, he's probably done multiple surgeries for people with thyroid eye disease. And he's saying, why don't you just skip that and do the biologic? Like shorten the story and save yourself a lot of, time and not very fun process. So that's something that probably, as you're around other TED patients, like you realize just how nice that is to have something that like a medicine that you weren't sure about in the beginning, but turned out to be actually a pretty good idea.
Yeah, it was one of the best decisions I think I made for myself at that time. And I think that he really just like took a look at my eyes and like my symptoms that I was having from thyroid eye disease. And he just decided that surgery was best kept for like later on when
Mhm.
my eyes were done changing. So I'm really grateful that I was able to see him.
Mhm.
He got kicked off of my insurance because he fought for his patients so hard to get onto Peza.
Oh, gosh.
So he's
Sorry
just
to
a
hear that.
really,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. Wow. So in terms of like long term with thyroid eye disease, like we realize that it goes into hiding, but maybe it doesn't totally ever go away. We don't know for a fact, but do you do certain things to like keep your health really strong to protect yourself from any kind of what is traditionally called like a flare of thyroid eye disease or the chance that it could come back?
I do. I researched nutrition a lot, and I actually just started working with a dietitian just to make sure that everything that I'm doing like makes sense for my body and my goals and everything. So I really focused on like eating healthy and de-stressing. I go to therapy. I just try to keep myself like mentally, emotionally feeling good too, so that way the stress doesn't have a wear on my body also.
Mm-hmm.
I go for walks, like mental health walks. I love just whenever it's nice outside, just going for like an hour or two, just walking around.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that that really helps me too, like decompress and just feel better overall.
Mm-hmm.
And then recently I started going and doing like red light saunas and stuff like that just to help get inflammation down. I really like center my life around wellness because I don't want to see another flare up come back. And it's kind of like what I can control is what I eat and what I do every day. So I just try to focus on that.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like you're taking out insurance in a way just to, some of the things that you're doing is that you'll be less likely to, um, you know, do something to bring the TED back on, right? Like you're saying, like keeping your stress low, being mindful of what you eat. I recall a story of someone who had like a very tenacious type of autoimmune, and he got on top of it, and then he decided some years down the road, he just didn't want to be that disciplined, and he just like let it all go, and it just came roaring back. And it just made me think that it is a little bit like you pay these premiums to an insurance, that you're protecting yourself. I mean, we don't know, we're not doctors, but just you would hope that, you're on that kind of track. I mean, do you feel that way?
Yeah, a little bit. I do. I mean, when you're working with like inflammation, I feel like a lot of it can come from like things that you do in your everyday life. And everyone has different triggers. So for some people, it could be like what they're eating.
Mhm.
We just don't know, I guess, what those triggers are.
Yeah, yeah. So it's really interesting. It's just very fun talking to you and just how you've taken such a proactive um, approach to, like right away getting help for yourself and then, following through with everything. Do you feel like now you're in a pretty good place with it? As you kind of look back, do you feel like, wow, I made it through, I'm on the other side, or like, where are you at now?
Yeah, I feel like, like when you go hiking and you climb a really big mountain and you're like, all right, I made it. And you kind of look like out to the view and you're just like, wow, look at all that stuff that I went through to get here.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how I'm feeling right now. Like I feel like I'm actually in a good place for the first time since 3 years ago when I first started having these symptoms come up. And I
Mm-hmm.
look back and I look through, I've had a couple rounds of Tepezza. I've had a couple surgeries. I've had my thyroid removed. Like I look through all this stuff and I just feel like I'm finally at a place where I could be like, like take a deep breath and just
Mm-hmm.
kind of sit with it and like accept all that's happened.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, you're part of the TED community organization. So what inspires you to like want to help other people? Because, like if you're all the way through it and you think, oh, good, I can just go on with my life, but making a choice to turn back, and someone who's at the bottom of the mountain just starting out, that you have an interest in helping them. Where does that come from, or what's that experience? Yeah.
When I was first diagnosed with symptoms, it was a really kind of dark, painful time for me. Um, which I don't think I mentioned before, but I had lost some friends. I was feeling very alone, scared, unsure of the future. And I just remember thinking, if I get through this, or when I get through this, at some point I want to help someone else that they don't have to go through this alone, or in the same way that I'm currently going through it. When I was first diagnosed, the TED community, it didn't exist yet. So there really wasn't many like options. There wasn't like a big community of people um who would be there for you and like that you could relate with. There really wasn't anything. So I kind of made a vow to myself that when I'm on the other side and able to help people, that I would like fully go into that and just try to help anyone who's feeling low, because I don't want anyone to feel the way that I did. Um, and at least I don't want anyone to feel that way alone. So,
Mhm. Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, I mean, you're just such a wonderful person to have as part of, the TED community. And something that, I mean, it shouldn't be surprising, but just so many very bright, accomplished, warm-hearted people that get TED. And that, it's great that we all have each other. And then when someone new comes in and they're like what you experienced, and I did too. Like for myself, it was 10 years before I talked to anybody else that had thyroid eye disease. So that was a long stretch of just like being alone with it. So you really, like, that value, I know that value of being able to connect with a community, and to just have like these immediate friends because they know exactly, what you've walked through. And yeah, it's just super great. So do you have any like parting thoughts um before we stop? Anything that you'd like to pass on to someone who is new, or something that you'd like to tell them about yourself or the TED community?
this community has been life changing for me. It pulled me out of a dark place last year, and it kind of redirected my life's purpose a little bit, or at least what drives me.
Mhm.
Um, this time last year, I was feeling pretty low, and you had actually said something to me that stuck with me. And it's something that I still follow every day. And it's that we have agency over our lives. And
Mhm.
that, like I took it as, I fought hard for the life that I already had. And I didn't want to just like throw that away, that I wanted to kind of pick myself back up and keep going. And it wasn't until you said that to me that it really hit and made sense for me, but it helped to kind of pull me out of that place. So this community has just been wonderful, and I'm so grateful to be a part of it.
Yeah, we love having you with us. So, well, Jesse, thank you so much. Just, really thanks for sharing your story. And for anybody else who's watching this, if you would like to connect with us, there's nothing to sign, no charges or anything. We have all kinds of really great programs that you can participate in. You can find us at tedcommunity.org. Okay. Take care. Thanks, Jesse.
Thanks, Christine.